This is J. Krishnamurti's third public talk in Bombay, 1977.
We were going to talk over together this evening sorrow, love, compassion, and also we're going to talk about death. I think they're all related to one another. But before we go into those questions, we have been talking about the last two times that we have met here, the importance and the urgency of transformation in our consciousness, the ending of the hurts that human beings receive from childhood, the understanding of relationship which makes up society, and the ending of fear and the comprehension of what is pleasure. And would like this evening to talk about the content of our consciousness, which makes up our consciousness, which we talked about earlier during the last two talks. As we were saying the other day, there is the art of listening, there is the art of seeing, observing, and then there is the art of learning. We talked about the art of listening, that is to listen without any distortion, to listen with your heart, with your mind, with care, with attention, with affection, not only to what is being said, but to the noise of the world, to the crows, to your wife and children, to your husband, but also to listen to your own thoughts, to listen to the content of your thought, and to pursue each thought and not miss one thought, to listen totally, so that in that very act of listening there comes about insight, which is neither analysis or the other form of materialistic attitude towards life, which is Marxism. We've talked about a little bit. Also we talked over together the art of seeing, how to observe, again without any distortion, without any motive. If you have a motive, that acts as a distortion. To see the world, the confusion, the misery, the wars and all the horrors that are going on in the world, to see them objectively, rationally, sanely. And that is not possible to observe clearly if you have any conclusion, any prejudice. So there must be freedom to observe the things that are going on politically, socially, economically, and religiously, to observe without the observer, which is one of the most difficult things to do, because the observer is the past. And when there is the observer looking, then there is distortion. We went into that. And now I'd like to go into a little bit into the question of learning. The art of learning. One learns first and then acts. You learn a method, a system, a technique, and then from that you act, either skillfully or not. The other is to act and from that action learn. You understand? If you are an engineer, you learn first all about mathematical stresses and strains, and after accumulating knowledge, you act, you build. The other is go out and by acting, learn. That's what human beings have done so far. Accumulate knowledge and then act. That's what we all do in daily life, in business life, in technological and so on, so on. Acquire knowledge and then act. Act and learn. Both come to the same. They are both based on acquiring knowledge. Whether you act and learn or learn and act are both based on acquisition of knowledge. Knowledge is the continuation of that which you have learned. Therefore, acting there, modified, becomes mechanical. Right? You see that. That is, I learn how to drive a car. Then, by driving often, it becomes almost mechanical. And the other is to act and learn. Both imply acquisition of knowledge and acting from knowledge. That is, knowledge acting from knowledge is always mechanical, though modified, changed, but it's constantly repetition or modified repetition of the past, which is knowledge, right? That's our life, that's the way we live. And that's what we call learning. From school, college and university, or in the factory, begin, learn, act, and then learn, and then continue modified and so on. All that is based on knowledge. Therefore, it becomes mechanical. Right? Our brains are accustomed to act mechanically, safer, it's more secure. You learn from your experience, you act. So it's always a tendency to bring about a mechanical action in life, a routine, a method, a system, which are all mechanical. There is another way of learning, which is non-mechanistic. Please pay little attention to this, because we are both of us are going to learn something quite different. which is non-mechanistic. And if one has understood the first two, that is, learn and then act, act and then learn from action, which are both the same. There is another way of action, which is having an insight into the whole process of acquiring knowledge. Having an insight, which is not accumulating knowledge and acting, but having an insight into the whole process of knowledge, acquiring knowledge. The very insight brings about action, which is non-mechanistic. This requires a great deal of understanding, of not only a verbal, but listening very carefully, with attention, with care, and care implies affection, and listening to it very, very carefully. That is, the acquisition of knowledge is always mechanistic. And the brain feels safe in mechanical activity. When you have the insight into that mechanistic attitude and a mechanistic way of life, that very insight brings about an action which is non-mechanistic. You have to find out. Now, if you have heard this very carefully, now we're going to discuss, go together, inquire together into the question of suffering. We are not analyzing, we are not learning from what the speaker is saying, but we are going to have an insight into suffering, which is entirely different. Right? I don't know if you understand this. I'll go into it as we go along. I wonder why you put on so many colored robes. Are you a special group? Special guru? Following somebody? Then if you are, then you're not listening. You have already come to a conclusion. You have already accepted authority. You have already become followers. Therefore, you are incapable of learning, which is inquiring together into the problem of sorrow, which is an enormous problem. And the solution of that doesn't depend on any guru or on putting on any colored robe or accepting any authority. Because one has to be a light to oneself. And you cannot be a light to oneself if you have accepted authority, which is obvious. So to inquire into this enormous problem of suffering, love, compassion, and death, one must have a very clear, perceptive, inquiring mind, not come with any conclusion depending on your fancy, on your romantic sentimentality. This requires very careful observation, not analysis. So we're going to inquire together, You are not listening to the speaker, either accepting or rejecting, because the speaker has no authority. He is not your guru, and therefore you are not his followers. But we are together inquiring into this problem of suffering. Together we have built this miserable world, this world of confusion, this world of violence, this world of ache, pain, hurt, fear, the world of social distinction, economic division, racial division. We have built it together. Therefore, we are responsible for the dissolution of this confusion. And this confusion cannot possibly be cleared by accepting any authority whatsoever, either the authority of the Gita, the Upanishads, or any guru. Because one has to find truth for oneself as a human being, and that does not depend on anybody. So please bear in mind, even though you have your colored cloth on you, you're ordinary people like the rest of us, suffering, unhappy, dull, living in a little sphere, a little corner of this immense world. And we think by living in that little corner, we have understood the immensity of life. So together, you and the speaker are going to inquire into this question of suffering. It is the lot of every human being in the world to suffer, consciously or unconsciously. Wherever you go in the world, among the affluent people or the poor people, among the ill health and the healthy people, this is a common factor, the suffering of human beings. Therefore, so you are the world and world is you. Please realize that from the very beginning. Your sorrow, your unhappiness, your confusion is to be found in America, in Russia, in China, in Europe, wherever you go. So you are part of that world. You may not like it. You may think you are special individuals, but you are not. You are like everybody else in the world, suffering, anxious, frightened, miserable, and with an ache in one's heart. So please bear that as an actual fact, not as a theory, not as a conclusion, but an actual fact, as that tree is a fact. Man, or human beings throughout the world, for centuries and millennia upon millennia, have suffered. They give various reasons for that suffering. In India they call it karma and all that. Others analytically say you suffer because your mother didn't treat you properly or something or other. So there is this suffering. And we are born with it. We bear it. We never revolt against it. We never ask ourselves if it is possible to end it. Not next life or some future date, but now. And that's what we are going to inquire. whether it's possible to end suffering, both suffering psychologically, whether it's possible to end it. I hope we are thinking together, not agreeing or disagreeing with the speaker, but thinking together, which is communication. If you are thinking of something else and the speaker is saying something else, there is no communication. Therefore, communication implies sharing this problem together. Therefore, you have to exercise your mind, your heart, your brain, not accept a thing, but together inquire, explore. Why do we accept suffering? You know what suffering is? Grief, the loss of someone you like, or suffer in your loneliness, suffer when there is no love in your heart, suffer when you can't climb the ladder of success, suffer when you face frustration. There are so many ways of suffering, and we have never been able to solve them because we have never observed what is suffering. We have rationalized it. We have escaped from it. We have suppressed it. We have developed a network of escapes from suffering. But we have never looked at it. Which is, you can only look at something when you don't run away from it. Suffering is the essence of all a crisis of energy at that moment. You understand? One loses one's son, brother, wife or husband, or the girl or the boy, through death, through indifference, through a cruel word, through so many ways we injure others, psychologically as well as physiologically. And we bear that suffering. Now we are saying, look at that suffering. Don't run away from it. Will you do it? We are inquiring. Will you actually look at your suffering? You have, obviously, like fear, you have some kind of suffering, haven't you? Yes? Right. So you know what suffering is. Instead of rationalizing it, or giving an explanation to it, or running away from it, or suppressing it, hold it, look at it, live with it completely. Live with it holistically, whole. You know, the word whole means good health. The word also means sanity, having a very sane mind, not a neurotic mind, not a mind that believes in anything, not a mind that's always doubting. That's not a sane mind. A sane mind doubts, knows the quality of doubting, questioning, having skepticism, but also it knows when to let it go. Like a dog on a leash, it must be held. But you also know when the dog must run freely, if you love the dog. So, and whole means healthy, sane mind, and also it means holy, H-O-L-Y. To look at that suffering holistically. You know? That is to look, to observe your suffering completely with all your attention. You understand? Which means also that the observer is the observed. Please bear this in mind. The suffering is not different from the one who suffers. They are both the same. The observer is the observed. The thinker is the thought. The experiencer is the experience. So, when you look, observe your suffering, the ache of loneliness, the loss of somebody, the misery, the grief of not being, all that, to look at all that as a whole. Then you will see that suffering turns into passion. Passion is different from lust, with which you are quite familiar, all of you. You know what lust is, but you don't know what passion is. Passion comes only when there is the ending of suffering. Because the word suffering has its root meaning in passion. The dictionary meaning of suffering is the essence of passion. So, with the ending of suffering, there is passion. And therefore, when there is passion, there is compassion, which is, come means with all, passion for all things, which we'll go into further. So you understand what we are talking about. We are saying that with the end of suffering begins wisdom. Wisdom cannot be bought in books. It cannot come by through following a guru, putting on yellow robes or doing mantras, all that rubbish. End sorrow, then from that comes great compassion. So, compassion implies love, obviously. You know that word love has been so misused, so destroyed, but yet we must use that word knowing, please listen, knowing the word is not the thing. The word mountain is not the actual mountain. I may describe the beauty of the mountain, the valleys, the light, the depth, the shadow, the blueness of an evening in the mountain light, and so on. But the description is not the mountain. right? The description is never the actual. So the word is never the thing. Suffering, the word suffering, is not the actual suffering. So one must be very clear to disassociate the word from the thing. But for us, word has become tremendously important because we don't know the thing. We don't know what love is, but we give a significance to love. So we're going to go together in the exploration of this strange word, the feeling of it, the beauty of it, the quality of it. We're going to go together and learn without analysis, but insight. You know, love has now become associated with sexual pleasure, right? Right throughout the world, love has become the means or the expression of sex and its pleasure. So we must inquire whether love is pleasure, is desire, or is it the product of thought? You understand? Are you following all this? Please, this is very important to find out, because in this country there is no love. There's a great deal of sentimentality, a great deal of so-called devotion, which is a devotion to an image which you have created out of your own mind. So that devotion is not love. The respect you have for your guru, for somebody, is not love. You want something from him. Don't you want something from your guru? Enlightenment? And you call that love, which is sheer nonsense. Nobody can give you enlightenment. You can't buy it. So we are going to inquire most delicately, sensitively, with great hesitation into this question of what is love. Don't come to any conclusion. We are saying, is love the product of thought? Is love a product of remembrance? Thing that you remember? Or is love a pleasure? Or is love desire? So, first let's look at the question whether love, which we have associated with pleasure, sexual, and therefore it is a remembrance of things that have happened, and that remembrance is the movement of time as thought and measure. You understand this? Please pay little attention, if you can, of an evening when I hope you haven't had too tiring a day doing your puja. So, please give some attention to what is being said. Care. Look, listen with your heart, with your mind, with all your being to find out. Because this is one of the most important things in life. Without it, do what you will bring about chaos in the world, which is what is happening now. So we are asking, is love a remembrance? And the remembrance, and then the projection of that remembrance. You understand? You remember having a sexual pleasure, then project it for tomorrow or next week, and that movement is the movement of thought. Right? Thought is a movement of time and measure. The more, and the distance from the yesterday's pleasure to next week's pleasure, the interval, which is a movement of time and measure. So we are asking, is love a thing of thought, which it has become now? Right? What love has become now is a thing of pleasure, a projection of thought, and remembrance of things of yesterday, which is the movement of thought. Therefore, it's a movement in time and measure. So is love a thing remembered? You understand? So for God's sake, understand this. You understand? I'm asking you a very, very serious question. Which is love a thing remembered? With most of you it is. Because you have associated it with sex as pleasure. Next point is love desire? And we said, desire is sensation, plus thought, which then becomes desire with its image and picture. That is desire. Is that desire love? Love of my country, love of my God. You understand? All desire, is that love? And can there be love when there is ambition? What do you say? Can there be love if you are pursuing enlightenment? That is your ambition. That's what your gurus are offering. And you are going after that. And I'm asking, when there is ambition, can there be love? When there is jealousy, can there be love? When you are achieving a position of authority, can there be love? Please answer it to yourself. Find out. And most human beings are seeking power. Political power, power in business, power religiously. Power means hierarchy, grades of power. And where there is power, politically, religiously, economically, there must be suppression. And each one of you want power, don't you? Business world, and you want power when you follow somebody. So you are all seeking power. So we are asking you, the speaker is asking you, when you are seeking power, can there be love? Don't shake your head. It will show in your daily life, not here. How you behave in your daily life, sir, that is what matters, not your agreement with the speaker now. So, can there be love when there is a wound? Can there be love when there is jealousy? Can there be love when you are all the time surreptitiously, cunningly seeking power, position? You understand all this? Obviously you do, but you're going to go seek power all the same. And so you will never have love. And without love, you know what happens? You reduce a country, a nation, a people which have no longer beauty. You know what beauty is? Do you? Oh Lord. You know, you see a beautiful mountain, clear in the blue sky, covered with dazzling snow, with a deep valley. At that moment, you are not, are you? Because that immensity drives out everything away from you, right? Have you noticed that? Haven't you? That is, that great beauty of the mountain is so immense that you, with all your problems, with your worries, with your desires and all the rest of it, for that single second you are not. Right? Have you noticed it? So, beauty is when you are not. You've understood? Right, sir? So, without love, there is no goodness. There is no virtue. And without it you wither, which you have become, a meaningless life that you are leading. So, suffering, love, compassion, and now we're going to talk over together the question of death. This is an immense question. Like every human problem in life, it's a very complex thing to understand. One can understand it intellectually, verbally, that the body disintegrates through misuse, through accident, through some disease. The body comes to an end. The brain withers away. We'll accept that as inevitable. That is the lot of every human being. And we will never inquire, rather, we're always asking what happens after death, right? Right, sir? We never ask what is before death. Do we? You understand, sir? What is before death, not after death. So we are going to find out what is before death and what is after death. First before, which is much more important than after. This again, one can treat it verbally, intellectually, or treat it with fullness of your comprehension, with your love, with care, with attention. That means ask this question with all your depth, with all your heart, to find out the meaning of death. Not what happens after, not how to be not to be afraid of death, but to understand this immense thing called death. So as we said, we're going to inquire into what is before death, which means what is our life before death, right? What's our daily life before death? What is your daily life before death? You'll answer it, won't you? It's very clear. Be educated, if you are lucky enough to get a degree, get a job, family, wife and children, and for the next 50, 60 years, go to the office day after day, day after day, become a machine. That's your life, isn't it? No? Yes, sir. Or your life may be to escape from all that and join a commune. Or go to an ashrama, escaping from all that. But there too is tyranny. There too you obey, you follow. That becomes the routine. You practice. So what is our daily living? Right? Which is what is our daily living as a human being with our consciousness. Our consciousness, as we said, is the content, which is fear, anxiety, pleasure, sorrow, the great many insults, wounds that one receives, and the desire for power, position, prestige, money, sex, all that is our consciousness. That consciousness, with its content, is you. With your religions, with your beliefs, with your superstitions, with your pujas, rituals, all that. That's your daily life. Daily life with your wife and children, the quarrels, the nagging, the domination, the possessive attachment, and the fear of losing, the fear of loneliness, right? All that is your daily grind, the mill, the rat race. Right? That's your life. And you want to find out what happens after death. You haven't understood this life, the living, daily life, and you want to find out what happens after death, right? So, we're asking you first, look at your daily life. Can that be transformed Can your fears end? Can your anxieties, your uncertainties, your beliefs, all that end? That's what's going to happen when you die, right? When you actually die, when you're no longer breathing, that's what's going to happen. You are no longer, there is no longer the family, no longer the money, no longer the worries of position, power, everything ends. Right? Actually, the brain cells without oxygen ends. You've understood? That is what we call ending. That is what we call death. The death of something which has had a continuity. You understand? A continuity. The continuity from childhood, school, college, learning, job, work, and sex, pleasure, fears, and all that is a continuity of your life. That is your life, which is a continuous movement, repetition, modifications, and all that. And that ends. The ending of that is most frightening for you, right? You followed the ending of something which you call a continuity of existence. That existence is confusion, is misery, without any love, without any, all the rest of beauty. Now, we are saying something else, which is, please listen and do it. Then you will find out what it means. To invite death while living. You understand? Not commit suicide, but to invite death, which means end. End to your continuity of your worries, of your fears, you follow? That means to live with death daily. Therefore, no attachment. Attachment isn't love. To end your worries. Now, not tomorrow, because death says, I can't wait for you. Don't argue with me. There's no time. It comes, so we invite it. Therefore, live with it. That means living and dying together. You understand what I'm saying? That means a life of no registration except that which is absolutely necessary. No psychological registration at all, except that which is essential for daily living, that is technological knowledge and all that. Can you do this? No, you can't. Why? Because to you, the misery, the confusion, the violence, sorrow is much better, much more worthwhile than something you don't know. So to you, what is important is knowledge. Knowledge of your suffering, not the ending of suffering, not the ending of attachment, not the ending of your daily compulsive desires. So we are asking, in the investigation of this enormous question, what is death? That death is inevitable. It may take years, or it may happen tomorrow. And there is sudden ending of this continuity. So, realizing that, acting with care, with affection, live with death. That means no attachment whatsoever to anything. You understand, sir? To your name, to your fame, to your power, to your position, nothing. It's not difficult. It's very easy if you really want to do it. And with the ending of that which is continuous, the ending, there is a new beginning. Without ending, there is no beginning. I know you'll all agree, you'll all say it's marvelous, perfect. But you'll go home and you will carry on with your ugly life. And that's where there is sorrow. You understand, sir? There is sorrow knowing that you can end it and you won't end it. That's a great sorrow. Then what happens if you don't end it? You understand? You've understood my question? You don't end it. What happens when you die? Now you are very interested, aren't you? I'll show you what happens to you. First of all, please realize something fundamentally. Realize it. Have an insight into it. That you are not separate from the rest of human beings. You are the history of human beings. In you is you are the repository of all human history. Therefore, you are the world. Because go where you will, they suffer, they have anxiety, they have fears, they are confused, like you. So the world is you, you are the world. That's a fact, psychological fact, whether you like it or not. You are not individuals. Because individual means a human being who is not divided in himself, indivisible. So that is a basic psychological fact, that you are the world and the world is you. So what happens to a man or a woman who doesn't end this continuity? You understood my question? What happens to you if you don't end your sorrow? You being a human being, like the rest of the world, they may have a different name, different face, different pigmentation, a superficial culture, which is no culture. So you are the world and the world is you. If that stream of continuity, which is you, doesn't end, what happens? It goes on, doesn't it? Right? It must go on. And the manifestation of that stream Please listen. The manifestation of that stream is a newborn baby with a name and a form, who is equally, as he grows up, greedy, envious, seeking power, position, right? So the manifestation of the stream is you. And when you step out of that stream, there is a totally different kind of life. That life which is timeless, which has immense beauty, which is the essence of compassion. Nobody can give it to you. No system, no guru, no book will give it to you. You, as a human being, have to step out of this vast current, vast river of suffering. Then you might ask, what is immortality? Right? That means that which never dies. Right? As long as a human being in this stream, that immortality, which is the essence of timelessness, the essence of timelessness, you can never comprehend. Because that thing must flower, give you, that comes, but it will not come to a man who is involved in the stream. You understood? So there is a benediction for him who steps out of that stream, because he knows what death is while living.